We're back live here in the Adobe think tank with Megan Burns, former Forrester analyst and customer experience guru. We're excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here, thank you.
So talk to us a little bit today about, you spent a lot of your career talking and focusing on this idea of customer experience.
Yes.
Now when we think of customer experience, you can easily, your mind can go to customer service, customer loyalty, but we're thinking of this much, much broader and bigger than that. So talk to me a little bit about, from a marketer's perspective, what does this idea of customer experience or digital experiences really mean?
It's a great question, and it means a couple of different things. On a very tactical level, it's about the fact that anytime someone interacts with your company, whether it's answering an ad or trying to take advantage of an offer, they're having an experience around that that can make a big difference in whether or not they're going to keep moving forward with that. That's sort of the most basic thing. But all of that exists in the context of some larger experience they've had with your company. I tend to talk about customer experience as direct interactions between the person and the company, but they've had brand experiences where they've heard about your brand, they've heard things in the news, so you have to take into account how are they going to interpret what happens when they finally do interact with you as a company directly in the context of everything that they've heard about you. Are they going to give you the benefit of the doubt if something goes wrong because everything they've heard is that you're a wonderful company to do business with? Or, will it be quite the opposite? And then of course those personal experiences, if you have a relationship type of a business model or you want to have a next sale, all of that hinges on whether or not this person sees your company as, yes, I want to keep doing business with these folks, or no, based on their own personal experiences. So it's key to the goals that marketers have, and it extends much, much more beyond sort of the initial selling phase.
Interesting, Megan. So what I want to dig into a little bit is this idea of cross-channel marketing.
Yes.
Multi-device, a whole bunch of stuff that nobody has one screen.
Yes.
That they're interacting with now. So when you think of this idea of the customer experience, how do marketers or companies even begin to start focusing on a person rather than I've got to hit a persona on 15 different devices?
I think the easiest way to do it is actually to put yourself in the person's shoes. Think about not a user, not a consumer, but an actual person having an experience, and stop talking about which devices they're on and just talk about what are they doing. And what are they doing in their language, right? So I've worked with clients in the past who would say, oh, and then they go to the landing page for this campaign and they do such and such. A customer would never say that. They'd say they follow the link in the ad to some sort of a page and then they read the information to figure out whether this is something they really want to do. And that language matters. And so when you pull it up to that level, it's more the customer journey level, you start to see the things that the customer wants to get done and the content they need, the things that they're looking for in a device-independent way. And then you can start to think about the permutations of, okay, so if this person starts in the call center and then moves to their mobile device, or they start on their mobile device and then they move to a tablet if they were on their phone. Those are particular instantiations, but usually the core of what the customer is looking for in that experience isn't going to change just because they're using different devices.
And I think that's interesting because the key to good cross-channel multi-device marketing is it should be seamless.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be I go from this device to a desktop to a wearable or whatnot. It shouldn't matter to the consumer, right? Talk a little bit about this idea of online and offline data. How do we need to be thinking about online and offline data when it comes to customer experience? Do we think of them as separate, or do we just think of them as this is part of the experience?
They're all part of the same experience. It's interesting, there's experiences and then there's sub-experiences. So it can be hard to figure out, okay, what's the right level of granularity? Do I just talk about a website visit, or do I talk about the context of opening a new bank account? The answer is yes, both. And so data about what they do online, data about what they do offline, ultimately you have to figure out what's the box that this person draws around their experience. Where do they think it starts and ends? So for example, there was a company that sells printer ink and toners, and they had thought that the experience of buying toner started when you placed an order online and ended when the box arrived at the office. But when they did some ethnographic research, they found out that in the customer's mind, that experience started the first time you got that faded piece of paper coming out and you realized the toner was low, until that perfect piece of paper came out in the end after the toner was installed. And so figuring out where the people that you're marketing to draw that box around the experience is going to tell you how much online, how much offline, and in what time frame. I think the other thing about that we have to be careful of is knowing what happened during an interaction or a set of interactions does not tell us the person's experience. It tells us some information about what transpired in that experience, but everyone knows experiences are subjective. So my interpretation of what happened, whether or not it annoyed me, whether or not I was surprised by it, those are things that increasingly data are becoming better able to capture, but it's still that subjective piece that we don't really have a good handle on from a data perspective. So we always have to look at that data in the context of, okay, what could this person's reaction have been? What's the range of possibilities to what actually happened here? And too often we get so used to one scenario that we just automatically assume that if someone left the page, they weren't happy or didn't like the offer, or things like that. And that can lead us to miss out on some real opportunities. So,
well, and you think of this idea of personalization, and we have different people.
Yes.
Personalization done right does not mean I'm personalizing to this persona. It's personalization done right is I'm providing an experience for Megan or for somebody else that in a non-creepy way that delights and surprises them with stuff that they've already given to.
Yeah.
We're not in an issue of data today, right?
Right.
So maybe talk a little bit about that. So we have plenty of data. Where do you tell companies that they should start? Where do they start gathering and mining the data to make sure they can then create a better experience?
That's a good question. I think the first place you need to start is with language, and this is going to come up again. I'm a word nerd, so a lot of how I think is in words. And my colleague at Forrester, Tony Costa, wrote a piece of research a few years ago where he drew a distinction between personalization and individualization. And what I liked about that was not just that the word individual, I think, conveys more of what you're talking about and what people want, but it's also just, we've been talking about personalization since the late 90s, and it means different things to different people, and frankly, it's got some baggage as a word. So starting to think about how can we individualize the experience, but then also taking a look at what does this data and what can this data tell us about where the customer is and what they want. Because when we think about personalization or individualization from, say, a merchandising perspective on a website, retail store, the customer should not know that they're being that the experience is being personalized. And I challenge people to think about, okay, if you get this 100% right, the person in front of the screen is not going to know what technology was behind it. How is it going to look to them? Well, it's going to look like every single thing that they're seeing is something that's interesting to them. And they won't know if that's luck or if that's something you managed to figure out from the data that you had about them. But thinking about when they come to a site, what is it that they're looking for? Or if they're going to be responding to something in email, what do you know about what's going on in their lives? And how can you make this relevant? I always ask people to think, the customer, there is not a journey of responding to a campaign. Your campaign either starts a journey or it happens to come in the middle of a journey that it changes the course of. But I think if you look at it and think about it that way, you'll have a better understanding of what individualization looks like when it's invisible, frankly.
Very interesting. Everybody, we're here live at AdWeek. We're here with Megan Burns, former Forrester analyst and a real guru on customer experience. Thanks for coming today.
Oh, my pleasure.
We'll be talking to everybody very soon.